All right, so the next thing that we're working on is we are going to do a component for your preferences so that these messages, you can change the backgrounds to be of the alert type that you want, and also the coloring of the text. So to get started on that, let's start on the back end. So when I look at this app, and I apologize, it's been a little bit since I worked on it. The first thing we want to look at here is my library. And so I have something here called an application user and an application user connection. I'm going to have another one here called application user preferences. And this is just going to be an application user. Interesting. I'm sure there's a reason for that. Okay, and on this preferences, I want to have a list of the it's going to be the, is it the color type? Well, we're going to have one for the color type and then one for the enumerator. So that's going to be a key and a value. So we could put them in like a list. I could add them on as columns. Just a second. But it should be a list because those enumerators could change. Just a second. Because there's two ways that I could do this, right? I could do it more programmery, where my application user has a number of preferences and then their value, right? But that could lead into things later where if those records don't exist, then I need to go in and backfill them. The other way I could do this is with a flat table. And then I could just have all the user preferences laid out on it and then have that as an enumerator for each one of the columns, right? So each iteration of the enumerator represents one column. So the color for debug and the color for logging. The first one feels like it would be more dynamic. But at the same time, after this thing goes live, I'll have to go in and retroactively add those things on. But it sounds like it would be easier for the front end to consume that. And the other way, every user that gets put in here is going to have an exponential number of records as the preferences increase. So we could make this like get only on the preferences, right? But then you have defaults as well. So which one of these do we want to use? on this side of things, let me look at my global service real quick. I can't show that one. I do have this enumerator in here called alert types. So it looks like I'm iterating over them. So let's do it that way. Oh, but that's going to blow up the database, but otherwise it's just one-to-one. So let's do it this way. We're just going to call this a preference. And then what you would need is a type of the preference, right? So this would be color, for example, and then one for notification type. So one like this. And this is a base entity, right? And then you have this preference color, which is going to have a numerator on it for the, oh, what was it called? Where is my globals on that? They're in the library under enums. The public library under enums. Alert type. And then also we want to have one for foreground color, right? I guess we'll do it with a hex code. So we're going to say text color hex, and then we'll have another one here for background color hex. Let me think about that for just another second. Yeah, okay, this works for me. So this is going to record the alert type and the colors that people are choosing for that. We can also ultimately have more of these, right? Like let's say that we wanted to add another preference for the notification. Like that. Well, for a notification, we would want to add a numerator in here. And I want this to be a notification type. Do you want it to have a notification type? Hold on. And we'll just put email in here. And then we'd have one more with the email. Which now includes a email address. Just one second. And you also need to have on this a bool for something like is confirmed, and then you want to have something on here for like confirmation token. And then we'd want more stuff on this later. But we're not going to do these two notification things right now. It's just an example. So in the application user preferences color, these are the only fields that we need here. And this one's going to be going from this application user preference, which has a one-to-many to application user has a link to application user. And then this one is going to be application user preference ID. And this needs to be of type base entity. And that's it. So now what we need to do is we need to add this to a new script. So in, I think it's entities, I really got to change the name of this. We have, this is our initial script. So let's rename this. If I look at this, we're just going to call it this. And then the init. Oh, never mind. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a new migration in Fluent Migrations for this. And I'm going to call this 2020 03 21 1505. And we're going to say add user preference color. Okay. And so now in this one, we want to add this same key to the migration top. And then we're going to say that this class is called this whole thing. Okay, we're only creating one table. So up here, we're going to create a table called application user preferences. And in this, we want to have the application user ID. So let's add these back and get rid of the other ones. Application users preferences, like that. And there's our application user ID. This is actually inherited like that. Which means we're also going to have a discriminator. Which we'll say is as integer 32. So back down here in the enums, I want to add in here a public enum called application user preference discriminator. And the only one that I want to have here is color. And then we have a, oh, I closed it. Alert type, which is going to be a int 32. And then we want to have this text color hex and background color hex. And then we want to have my timestamp. So now I need to create my foreign key. And so this is going to go from application users preferences to applications. And it's going to go from application users preferences with a foreign key of application user ID to the table of application users and its ID with no on delete. And then here we can just drop our foreign key. And then we want to delete our table. That's it. So now if I go into my migration project, I want to migrate up to the most recent one, and we'll run it. Now if I open up SQL Server, and I look inside of the Monitaur, here is my preferences table. Everything looks great. So now what we need to do is write a service for it. Okay, so let's open up our data access layer and look at my service here. And we're going to just create it like this. And let me move this up to, come on, right here. We're going to say read payload async. In this one, we're going to say that this is a read application user preferences asynchronous. And all we want here is the long for the application user ID. This one is a read application user preference singular. We just want to have the long for the application user ID. A create application user preference asynchronous, which is a application user preference create request. A update application user preference asynchronous, with this as a update request, and then a delete application user preference asynchronous, which also needs to have my long for the application user ID. Okay, let's start with that. So now we need to go over into the library here, and we need to create a application user preference DTO. Like that. And then we need to create another one here, which is for a color. And then has the same properties as the entity that we created. Okay, and then I need to create down here a application user preference create request. And a update request. And then a color update request, and then a create request. So on the color create request, I need these things. On the update request, it's the same thing except without the word color here. And then we have this one, which is a update request, which is now a create request, and a update request, which is like that. Looks good. We rebuild it. Okay, on my data access layer services, now this is set up and good. Tells me it hasn't implemented those, which I haven't. But before I forget, I need to add all that to the AutoMapper. So right here, we're going to do a application user preference. And then we want to do it again for color. For preference color. So the AutoMapper is set up. So now in my service data access layer, let's go ahead and implement this. We can do it right from here. We're going to have to write a little bit of SQL now. It won't take but a few minutes. This is going to be read application user preferences. And actually, when I look at this again, this needs to be a application user preference DTO. Okay, this one is going to be all for the color DTOs. And then you need to do one for the color DTO here. Like that. Like that. So let's go ahead and bring these all in here to implement them. Perfect. Let's do this one first. Okay, so in this we want to get my application users preferences which is what I called it, right? Where my application user is that. And then this is going to be a application user preference, and then a application user preferences DTO, which is going to map to that. And that's one. Okay, the next one we want to we're going to say here that this is going to be a application user preference color DTO. And again, what I want to do is select everything from that table where your ID is that, and your active is that, and your c.discriminator is equal to and now in here you want to say application user preference type. And that should just be a value, so it doesn't need that. And then we're going to do this again. Like that. Like that. And then this one needs to be a long ID. So that's right. You've got one here done. You've got this one done. We need to do another one here, which looks like this. And in here, I can just use this little bit of code here and modify it. If I look at this, even though ID is a string, you have to put it in the quotes. And your c.application user ID is equal to application user ID.toString. Okay. Then we have a create here. which we'll just dump right here. And in this one, we're going to create a new map, and then we're going to insert into that table each one of the properties from this. So it's application user ID, alert type, text color hex, and background color hex, and the timestamp. And then alert type, text color hex, and background color hex. And then you're going to map that out. Okay, we have an update now. And in this, we're going to update it where my text color hex is equal to text color hex. My background color hex is equal to background color hex. And your timestamp, where your ID is that, and your application user ID is equal to @application user ID. Oh, shoot. Just like that. So first you want to say var existing record equals await read application user preference color asynchronous of my request.id, my application user ID. If my existing record is not equal to null, then you want to do this. Looks like these things are usually returning bool here. And the last one here is this delete. So you want to add one more in here then, which is right here. Like that. And this one needs to be and your c.discriminator is equal to, and it's a application user preference color type, preference type. like that. Okay, when you map this, you need to make sure that your entity.discriminator interesting, you missed a field there. So we need to add that onto the migration. You're calling it a discriminator. Like that. And here you're going to set your discriminator equal to color. There's your update. And then this is your last one, the delete. So you first want to check for the existing record. Okay, and then if you can find that record, then what you want to do is run this SQL, where we're going to update my preferences. And the timestamp. And that's it. Okay, we need to modify this because we need to have one of these. And this says it can't update the update because it needs to be a type of bool. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is we need to write a test for it, but we also need to have an endpoint for it here. I think that should come when you start. So I'm going to say that it goes here under projects for this payload. In this payload DTO, we're going to add one on here called a player application user preference color DTO, and we're going to call this my color preferences. So in my implementation, we're going to do a color preferences equals await read application user preferences color of your application user ID. And that should be it. Now it should be exposed on the front end. So we're almost done. What we need to do is we need to write a test for this. I'm going to make a new class here called application users preferences tests. And I'm going to change the word connection in here to be preference. This should all be pretty straightforward, except for the methods that I need to add in here. My update request has different fields in it. It's going to have sorry, there's a couple of little things we have to do here. These need to be color. Oh, because ID is coming in here. Okay, add some hex codes in there. Oh, shit. Is that what it really named it? Sorry about that. Okay, we don't need this. Whole test. And then we have the delete one here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our base tests. And I'm going to copy these and bring these down here. Pardon me. And we're going to change in this all the words from connection to be preference, as well as the lowercase ones. Okay. Add application user preference color. Alert type will be alert. Oh, we want to do a different one. We'll say debug. Background color equals a bunch of 6s. The text color will equal a bunch of 7s. The discriminator will be a color. And then you're going to insert application user ID, alert type, background color hex, text color hex, and a discriminator. Just like that. And then you're going to query it. And then this one, you're just going to remove it, and that's it. Read application user preferences color async test. Okay. We don't care about this one. Here's our create. Here's our update. We need to pass into here our application user.id. Like that. We'll fix that in just a second. This one needs to have the application user.id on it. And the last one here is the add. Sorry, it's the read. So let's go ahead and get rid of this one and make this one a color. And your p.discriminator is equal to, and it's a application user preference type dot color. Okay. Same thing here. Oh, no, we did need the other one, which is the same thing as this one, just without this discriminator. Cute lobster, I'm married. Okay, everything built. So what I can do now is in my migrations project, or in my base test, I have a dispose where I want to get rid of my everything from my preferences table. And now let's go ahead and rebuild it, and then we will test it. Okay, here are all my tests. We'll let these run. It looks like read alerts failed, as well as application user preferences, everything failed. So we'll need to look into what's going on there. If I look at my alerts tests, why did this fail? It's going to add some alerts here. Now I'm going to try to read them. I didn't get any of them. Are they all there in the database, though? Well, yeah, they're all in the database, so the read's just not working. Let's try it again. And we got the client application. We're going to get our number to retrieve here, which is 10. It's this. Okay, so when I look at this SQL, select top 10 from where, that, and that. Oh, I see it. I see it right now. Oh, come on, I just saw it. It's because let me try running this, but I think this is bad SQL. So what's wrong with it? The client application is wrong. Oh no, 27. And it's active. And it has been dismissed as false. But all of those have been dismissed. So in my test, has been dismissed as false. Let's try that again. Active is true. Has been dismissed is true. Why do you have that in there twice? Right here. If your request includes active alerts, let me look at this really quick. So we're making the SQL query here. I'm saying that my number to retrieve will be 10. My status types are 0. My include active alerts is not true. So here, I could make this an OR. And we'll try that again. Just let it run regular this time. Let's see how this works. Okay, I got my 10 records back. So where is it failing now? It looks like I put a lot of logic in this test. I might come in and check these things again in a little bit because we were working on this other one. Let's just see where it dies out. And that's right. That's right. That's right. Has been dismissed. Is now true. Okay, so that means that in here, you want to say, and has been dismissed is false. And now it should work. And there it is. All right. Hey there, Jitspo. How are you doing? Thank you so much for that raid with a party of 8. How are you guys doing today? In case you don't know me, I'm Rob. Streaming during the week, a little bit during the weekend, although my schedule has changed. We're working on the Monitaur. It's actually live. You can check it. I'll push it to CI at the end of it. We're adding a new component, which is going to be for color preferences, and that is now... we have just finished our unit tests for that. The back end is complete. We still need to do the front end, but we should now go in and try to debug these unit tests. So if you have any questions what I'm working on, don't hesitate to put them into the chat. Thanks again. Let's go ahead and run this one here. See where this is failing. Cool. Also, make sure you check out youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com where I put all these videos up. You can also check out pixelhorrorstudios.com too. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what happens here. We were adding... This looked like that failed. Okay, our new entity looks good. Your discriminator. The alert type, the background color hex, and the timestamp. So why is that erroring out? Let's do a try and a catch on that. and just return here a null. All right, let's see what we're getting. Cannot insert null into project name. Project name? Project name? Project name. Why would that be saying that? Project name. Let's go ahead and jump back over here. This is why we write the tests. So that means that in my migration that I wrote, I just had a small error. Project name. This actually is discriminator, and there is no project name. So let's go ahead now and rerun that migration here with an up and a down so it recreates it all. Looks good. And now we can run my tests again. Oh, still nothing. If I look now at my refresh table, that looks better. Discriminator alert type. So why is it failing now? Sorry about that. So why would this be failing? We'll get it here. Okay, so we got through it. This time when I'm trying to read it, it's failing because it's saying invalid column active. So that means that on my migration, I forgot this guy. And now we'll rerun it. In the Solution Explorer, we'll rerun my migration project. Oh, come on. There we go. Just for safety, we'll disable that migration up. We'll go into the Test Explorer and rerun all the tests. Okay, so our read worked. Let's look at our Next one. Okay, we got an error here because convert the varchar color type to int. So back over on the migration where we created the table. Alert type. Color to int. What? Because I don't think it has these things on it. Oh, no, it does, but it needs to be cast as an integer. Let's try it again. Only takes a second to run. Okay, most of them all passed. Looks like our create is failing now. Okay, this time, cannot insert null into discriminator. Ah, you forgot to add on here the discriminator. We'll rerun just that test. Still failing, eh? Okay, let's see why. The insert conflicted with the foreign key. Column ID. What? If I look at the preferences table, there's nothing in it. Oh, is it because the entity.application user ID equals application user.id? Same issue. So when I look at this thing, the entity now sets the application user ID, which looks right. That looks good, so it wrote it. Now we're going to read the preferences color by that DTO, which is now what's failing. Because this needs to be cast as an integer. What do you mean you can't hear me? I see that the volumes are working okay. Okay, and now let's do our final test. Everything built. You can't hear me. Why can't you hear me? What if I turn that up? Is that any better? All right. Okay, so let's take a look at this one here. Why we're failing on this. So the very last one, Thanos DB says, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Thanos. I appreciate that. Interesting. Okay, let's see where this is failing. Why do you have a try catch in here? That messes things up. Must declare the scalar active. In your update request? I don't need that here. That should do it. Let's go ahead and run all the tests. Okay, I got it. I can hear you now. Thank you, sir. Oh, really? What is happening here? Looks like it got through this and is doing the update. Nope, same issue. Timestamp. So let's do this like this. Date time.utcnow.toString. And it worked. So there's all the tests passing. That's why we run them with Dapper, because I noticed I make SQL problems sometimes if I don't test it properly. Let everything run to... And there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over into source tree. And we're over here on the app. and I can say added application user preferences on the back end. Still need to create front end and logic. Okay, and we'll push that out. Well, that's it for me for today. I'll be back again in the morning at, let's say, 8 a.m. We'll be picking up either on this project or on OpenDJ Radio, which I'm doing small little changes to, although I may work on that tonight. What's remaining here is that we need to create the Angular CLI front end. We need to make it so that the graphs, they update with the appropriate colors that you designate. And then we have a couple of other things that we wanted to do, which include moving our search panel to a component, and then also major formatting in CSS work, and then documentation. We need to add that on there. We also need to do SEO, so we'll definitely do SEO coming up in the next couple of days. But thanks so much for staying with me today. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the morning. Later, guys. Bye.